born, I was able to see a lot firsthand, like the milestones and stuff, I was there for it. And I remember my brother said, he's like, they don't know anything. Like,
Hmm.
they don't know anything. He's like, it just blew his mind. Like, oh yeah, like they don't know anything.
Anything, like literally. Yeah, you have to teach them. It's so wild that people don't understand because I've been working with children for the past maybe like 15 years or so.
Yeah.
And a lot of the parents that I talk to, yeah, they just don't understand that, you have to teach them day by day in a slow process. It's a slow process that you just have to work with it. And a lot of parents is like, oh, why aren't they talking? Why aren't they walking? I was like, well, how much time are you putting into every day to helping them learn how to talk and learn how to walk? And it's usually they just don't know what to do, and so they don't, and so they need help. So it's wild. Yeah.
It is wild. And I think too, it's, you learn a lot about yourself as an adult by being around children and
Mm.
animals, I think.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like you're trying to train a puppy, it's like you learn about patience. You
Mm-hmm.
learn about like, I got to understand you from you. You're a dog. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to bite stuff. Um, or with kids, it's like, yeah, like they're starting from scratch. They don't know anything, but it's like, like anything else, even within ourselves, how much effort are you actually putting in?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's
You
the key. It's like, how much time are you spending on these things per day? And yeah, I see so many people and parents, get frustrated at their kids and yell at them. So I'm like, they just don't know, they're just trying and experimenting with the world, and they don't know that this is going to hurt them or they should stop after being told no a few times. It's like they're just doing. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's extreme patience for sure.
Right. Yeah. We were, me and my dad were talking about it because I just took a trip to Nashville for, I think like 32 hours. Like, flew out there from Michigan. Thankfully, it was direct, so it's easy. Um, for a birthday party for a friend of mine, and some business stuff in there too. And we were talking on the plane coming back that if you were God and you were going to design an optimal human, what would you do? Like the human says, like, oh, I want to be great. You're like, all right, well, I'm going to give you a bunch of challenges. The human was like, yeah, wait, what? It's like,
Exactly.
oh, I want to be really brave. It's like, okay, I'm going to provide things that scare you,
Hmm.
and it's like, oh, I want patience. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to give you reasons to wait. And I'm going to make certain processes real slow,
Absolutely.
and it's like, we don't think about that when we're asking to be great. You and I have both stepped into a realm of okay, I'm going to purposely make myself and my world better. We don't realize that, like, all right, well, there's a certain transaction that has to happen.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah, like Myron says it. Myron says he's like, soon as you make a worthwhile goal or set an intention, disruption follows, right? It's always the disruption that
yeah,
trips people up because they're not expecting it. And
right. Yeah, that's the thing that I learned along the way. We talked about it before, that asking to be great is asking to go through whatever it takes to get there.
yes,
And we
yes,
don't know that. We're blind going into it, like, oh yeah, it's a great idea. It is a great idea. At the same time, like there's things that are built into it that can deter you, for sure.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Like that disruption sometimes might be, oh yeah, I'm starting this side hustle to expand my finances, and then you get fired from the first job. You're like, wait, but you
exactly,
don't realize that like that's giving you more time to enhance those skills to quadruple the income by the end of the year.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, analyze like why you may have gotten fired. Like that's an area of improvement. Like what went wrong, and use that to better yourself. And yeah, sometimes. Yeah, I always say that sometimes the leap of faith that you have to take on this journey is a chasm. It's like it's gonna hurt you financially, it's gonna hurt you mentally, physically, something. Something's gotta be stressed. And yeah, if you really, really want it, you'll find a way. If you don't, I mean, you'll find excuses for sure. And
Oh
uh,
yeah.
this is road. It's hard. I was thinking about it the other day. It's like going on a walk from like Michigan down to Texas. It's like it's gonna take a while. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna do all these things. But in entrepreneurship, it's like that's for your mind. It's like you leave your comfort zone, you leave your home, and you go on this mental journey where you have to leave some people, that behind because they're not on that journey and they're not willing to accept that you're going on the journey. And it's just this grueling journey over a long distance or a long amount of time that is, you're going to come into roadblocks. You're going to have to cross rivers. You're going to stop for traffic. You're going to have to run into
Right.
that you can't go around. You got to back up and go around the other way. It's like you're going to run into all of these things in your mind where you have to find a way through it if you want to make it to your destination. And it reminds me of a friend of mine, and we were talking the other day. She started it was a puppy or a dog uh, cold frozen treat business, right? And
Sure.
he did the whole thing. She was in development. She had the whole branding done and everything. And then it was like, put it into production was going to cost her $80,000. And she could not get over that hump. She couldn't convince herself that that was a good move for herself. And, everyone's got to make that decision for themselves. But I keep telling her, I was like, what happened? What would happen if you made that investment and then it worked out like you had planned? Like, where would you be right now? That's crazy. But that huge amount of money was too much of a leap of faith for her to make it. And so she quit her business and she went back to work in a regular job. And she's been trying to figure out herself for the past many years. And I think, like, what could have been if she just would have just continued on that journey and just took that leap and said, F it, let me just see what happens,
Right. And I think, yeah, when you fast forward everything, say like, it's our last week of life, you're regretting the things that you never tried.
Yes, exactly.
And there's a great book called the Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And the number one is I wish I went for it.
Mhm.
I wish I bet on myself to do the things that I thought were just awesome. And just like not knowing, I think that stings a lot worse than failure.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm so glad, like you and I, we live in the genre, the time that we live in, because we have access to other people's stories that are like, hey,
Oh yeah.
just so you know,
Mhm.
like things might go sideways and you're gonna have to make real scary jumps, But like after, or rather on the other side of that scary jump, like you said, is the greatness that you desire,
Yes.
and like, yeah, it is scary. I know. Like
Exactly.
I'm telling you, I was scared too. And sometimes I'm still scared.
Mhm.
And you realize that the more that you do it, though, the easier it is to jump next time.
Yes, that is true.
Like now running my second business with, focusing on coaching and creating superheroes, which is a pretty cool story. It's
Absolutely.
just, but like, I don't think it would be nearly as easy if my first business didn't have all the hurdles that it had,
True. True. True.
because that taught me how to jump higher. That taught me how to like keep going. That taught me how to dodge bullets. It taught me about, I think too, by default, and I think you and I have that added benefit of having our faith to lean on,
Yes.
because it's like other people that are entrepreneurs and stuff and really just want to build something from scratch, something new, that don't have faith. I see it being a lot harder for them,
Oh yeah.
because
Oh,
it's we're built in to think and believe in the impossible because of our faith.
mm,
Like, I don't have to see evidence today. I
mm.
believe it still, and when it gets too hard, it's like, all right, well, God, I'm gonna need you to take all this stress, because losing it, and like, where's the next answer? And he's like, oh, well, there's the next answer over there. You're like, all right, cool, thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, just I was fascinated with the laws of the universe too. Like simple laws like you reap what you sow, right? It gives
Yeah.
you so much clarity and faith that, okay, I'm gonna put in the work to build a successful business and I'm not gonna worry about the results because I know God put it in there that I'm gonna reap what I'm sowing right now. So I'm gonna put the work in, just focus on myself, the inputs, and the outputs are gonna take care of themselves because I know that's how he created things. That's how things work around here. Plant the seed, you water it a little bit, you give it some time. You don't go out there and try to pull the leaves up and stress and get mad at it. It's not growing fast enough and all this other stuff. You let it do its thing
Yeah.
and go through the process. And you're the same way. You have to go through the process. This is understanding the course or the journey that we're all on. I mean, I don't know if you ever read about the hero's journey, but I loved learning about that as well. But it's like this journey that we are both on has been done by other people before, right? So we're
Right.
on a road that is highly mapped out, where people understand that you're gonna run into things that scare you. You're gonna stress. You're gonna think that it's not gonna work out. You're gonna second guess yourself. Why did I even start? Where am I even doing here? That's par for the course. We all go through the same things. So if you're there, that means you're doing it right. It's like
Right. Good
there's no
job. This
need
is
to quit.
expected.
Exactly. This is it. This is it.
Yeah.
This is what hard feels like. It's if you want to accomplish your dream and build your business like that, this is what you're signing up for. So just understand, like anybody listen, if you are in a spot where you're unsure and you're stressed and you're overwhelmed and you don't know what to do next, like you're in the perfect spot. Keep going. You're doing great. You're doing better than anybody who has not started or too afraid to go after it for themselves. So kudos to you. Congratulations. Keep working at it. You're going to figure it out if you just keep going.
Oh, absolutely. And it feels so much better, right? And it's like I remind my clients too, like when they run into those blocks, is we respect this kind of person. Like we
Yes.
respect the person that goes into the hardship with like, whoa, this is harder than I thought. And then figure stuff out and keep going.
Yes.
And it's like I heard it a long time ago from one of my coaches, I think, scars tell stories. Scars tell stories, it's like, oh yeah, I learned that. I learned that. I learned that. And me and my mentors, we started saying a few years ago, it's not lonely at the top. We're just more choosy. We've
Mm.
made way more choices in ourselves and in our life than the average person does.
Oh yeah.
We've chosen to keep going. We've chosen to get up early. We've chosen to take that webinar. We've chosen to leverage ourselves with credit. Like we've chosen to believe again. We've chosen to combine forces with other people. We've made so many choices that it's like, yeah, of course we're here. Of course. Like, are you kidding me? Like Jay-Z said, I didn't do all this work to stay the same.
Oh yeah.
Like what? Like, are you kidding me? Like, no, dude, like, of course I'm different. Of course, I don't relate to that type of mindset even that I used to have. And it's like, I jokingly say, but like, I'm serious with it. Every so often, I'm going to look back and be like, I'm way smarter than I used to be.
Oh yeah.
I'm way smarter. Like, are you kidding me? Like, stuff that used to bother me, don't bother me.
Nope.
Stuff I used to freak out about, I don't care. Like,
Exactly.
and like, I think too, we end up needing less and less of the outside reassurances in order to bet on ourselves.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I don't need it to be ideal. Like, are you kidding me? I broke my neck and then still kept going. I was like, nah. So what? Like, oh, my body doesn't work. That's fine. Like it's still a good idea, like I'm still gonna do this thing, and I think it's finding those things that do mean something to you really matters. Like it
Oh
starts
yeah.
with motivation, and motivation. People say, I think it's funny they say that you don't need motivation, you need discipline. I'm like, well, motivation literally means a reason to do it. Like you do need reasons to do it. You can't just stop there though. Like you got a good reason, okay, and
Exactly.
and I'm going to create systems, and I'm going to listen to clues of people that came before me, and I'm going to surround myself with good people, and I'm going to believe in myself, and like you got to create this little habit stack, like it's benefited all of us creating that world to make things easier so that they're more doable.
Oh yeah. And there's a cyclical nature to it. So I always say it's action, inspiration, motivation. So it's like unsure, but you get started, right? You don't know what you're doing, you get started. Then you get a little bit of momentum behind you. Then you start gaining some inspiration. You're like, okay, I can actually do these things. There's some things happening. Then the motivation kicks in, and then you start believing in yourself more, and then you start taking more action, and then it just starts compounding on top of um, itself as you keep going, right? And I always say, yeah, no, there's no risk, there's no story, right? I mean, who wants to open up a book or read or watch a movie where it's like the hero just runs through all the villains, no challenges, no nothing, and then ta-da, they're winning at the end, and they save the day. Like, no one likes that. That's not a good story. So how do you expect to go through all of this and make it to the end and be able to look back and tell a good story if you're not challenged, if you're not stressing about it, if you're not waking up crying because you can't figure it out? It's like it is literally blood, sweat, and tears you got to put into this thing if you want to make it work, because it's not the reason why so many people are I mean, want to be normal. Normal's fine, but it's like that's what everybody is. If you're shooting for normal, then there's a definition that you're mediocre, because it's just a regular life. If you want that exceptional life, you have to be prepared to go through the grueling process that it takes, waking up early, sacrificing sometimes with your family at times, putting in the long hours, being able to push through self-doubt and the things that you keep telling yourself about how you can't make it, or how no one believes in you, and then obviously dealing with friends and family and coworkers and everyone else who literally don't believe that you can make this happen, and being able to be so delusional that you don't believe any of that. You got to trust yourself. It's like, I hear everything that you're saying, but I mean, I don't believe it. And you don't know me, and you don't know what I'm about to do. And I'm just going to keep working it and figure this out on my own. But yeah, it's fascinating to me how, uh, people love to talk about passion. It's like, oh, I'm passionate about this. Oh, what are you passionate about? Follow your passions, yada, yada. And your passions are always supported. But then if you get obsessed with something like, oh, I'm obsessed with making this business work, which a lot of the times you have to reach a point in your mind, like I said, where you're so delusional that if no one else believes it, you believe in yourself and that you're going to make it work. And it's only delusional until you make it happen. And you have to tap into the side of yourself where you're just so obsessed with making it work that nobody can tell you otherwise. And it's going to happen no matter what. It's like I said, like 50 Cent always says, get rich or die trying. That's the vibe and the feeling that you get when you're on this journey trying to make this work.
Right. And like you end up relating to like more and more high achieving, exceptional people.
Yes.
And like you realize too, like one of the things that I would say in my superhero training is hardship is the precursor to glory. If there's nothing to overcome, then there is no glory. There's no win. There's no like, yes, I made it. There's no feeling of achievement. There's no real anything. There's no real substance if it wasn't earned, if it wasn't hard. And if like you were saying, and that made me think of this quote: if you want an exceptional life, you have to be willing to be the exception.
Oh,
you have to, and like there are going to be times of feeling, reluctant, like I don't really want to keep going. That's okay. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. You're allowed to feel however you feel. However, if you really want it, you'll still do the work. And like I never, well, I wouldn't say I never thought, but like I never, it never even came to my mind being thankful that I broke my neck. I'm like, oh yeah, like the day it happens, I was not thankful. Like, yes, this is the great day. Like, I'm so glad that I can't feel anything in my body. It definitely was not that immediate,
No, yeah.
But looking at it, because I did keep going, now I look at it like, oh, I'm thankful because it slowed my life down enough that I could really think and start making purposeful choices. It quieted all the noise, and oftentimes like it's really hard to think of anything greater than the now when there is a whole lot of noise. And it's like, there even this the noisiest version of life. The internet's always there, like it's a million people's opinion rather than just the 7 people that like it's way bigger, and like the comparisons are way bigger too. So it's like it's easy to like get bombarded or even lost of like, well, I don't even know what I want to do. And for me, like having that quiet time, I'm just like, all right, well, I don't really know what I want either. I'm like, all right, well, what am I interested in? And I think sometimes it starts with just that basic, like, well, what actually excites me when I think about it? That may be a clue of like where to start, And
Oh yeah.
you're not going to build a successful business or successful anything in a day. So you might as well just start with what is interesting. And at the time, I remember I was like, all right, well, if I boil it down to what's true to me, I like money, I like clothes, and I like girls. How can I make this work? What am I going to do with that? And I was like, oh, what if I studied fashion design in college? I'm like, is that even a thing? And it turns out my university had one. And I was like, cool, I'll start with that. And like that, like you said, taking that action, then once I got into it, I was like, okay, this is doable. I like this. I want to excel here. I can see myself winning in this. And then eventually, like, I've got more reasons. Or like, oh, I want to start a label. Oh, I want to do this. Like all that stuff comes up, and like you said, it just repeats. repeat, action, inspiration, motivation, just keep going. And eventually, like I got my degree in that, but I also met so many more people that opened up so many other opportunities because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, I bet on myself in this, I'll bet on myself over here. And then like my entire college career just opened up to another world and then other opportunities. And then when the next thing was like, oh, well, I'm interested in that, let me go see what this is about. And then started learning other languages. And it's like this domino effect. And you realize that you're not just doing stuff, you're building a life and creating something that never existed before. And it's like it's awesome living that way.
Oh yeah. And that's why I want everyone to understand the power of the simple choices that you make every day. Like rewind back to when you made the decision to actually, take that class in college. Like imagine had you said, nah, it's not going to work. And then you started doing something else. Everything that came after, including your business, like would never have come to fruition.
Right.
One decision can domino you into a completely different life. I don't know if you ever watched the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. I love that movie because
Well, I have it. I've
you
had
gotta
it
check
on
it
my,
out.
I'm like watching it like I'm
There you go. Watch it because it's like gives you so I don't know if you believe in alternate universes, different versions of yourself. So basically they have different versions of themselves in different universes, and it shows the power. Oh, if you wouldn't have made this decision back in the day, or if you'd have made this decision, you'd be a totally different person. And they showed this lady like, oh, in this version, you left your husband early, and now you're super successful movie star because that led you down this path, and blah blah blah. So one simple decision in her life changed everything. And so
yeah.
people always think that they can't really do much now, but it's not about taking some like massive action where you're doing like, you spend 100K on some random thing. No, it's the simple things that you're doing right now. Like, how are you getting started? When was the last time you picked up a book and like read like a page? When was the last time you just went for a walk in nature? When was the last time you called someone that you haven't spoken to in a while just to say, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. What's up? What are you doing? How are you feeling? Simple things like that can change your life for the better in multiple different ways. And I love how you mentioned that, when you broke your neck, it wasn't a good moment, right? It was obviously, it was terrible at the time. But then now when you look back on it, you can reflect and say, you know what? This is how it's changed my life for the better. So now I can look back and say, you know what? That was for a reason. And I appreciate that happened because it made me who I am today. And I love who I am today. And without that moment, you wouldn't be you, right? So it's all about the stories that you tell yourself about what happened to yourself in the past. Like the past happened. We can't dispute that. But what you tell yourself about what happened, that you can
Yeah.
change. So I went through high school and I was like this, and I was so shy. I sat by myself at lunch. I didn't really have many friends. I called myself a loser, a nerd. I love basketball. I got cut from the freshman basketball team, and basketball was my world. And I never tried out again because I was so discouraged. And I've always looked back at that as like a terrible time in my life. It's like high school. Ugh, I regret it. Ugh, it's so dumb. I was so blah blah blah. But now I look back and say, you know what? It made me realize I don't want to be shy. I don't want to sit by myself and not really give my input where I'm like a little mouse in the corner where I can't even speak. I don't want to be like that anymore. I don't want to be the kid that gets cut and then quits on his dreams and doesn't want to continue because he reached some adversity. It's like, I don't want to be like that. Okay, so high school did teach me a lot about life and like what I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up. So now I look back on it as a positive thing because if I wouldn't have gone through that, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be building a business. I wouldn't be changing lives. I wouldn't be on this podcast with you. It's like it's led me to a point in my life where I'm very happy and grateful for everything that's happening. That I'm just like, I look back on that as a positive experience now. So I feel like everybody can do that. If there's something in your past that's kind of been holding you up, you can write a different story about what it means to you. I usually say, hey, figure that. What's that moment that's holding you up in your past? Tell me 3 good things about it. Like what happened from it? What are 3 good things in your life today that could have stemmed from that? Okay, so let's count the ways that this may have been a good thing that happened to you because, like you said, without having that struggle, that challenge, something that went wrong in your past, you wouldn't have learned something that brought you to where you are today. So all those moments in your past can be looked at in a positive light.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like one of the things too is I remind my clients, you end up fulfilling scripture by default when you do keep going.
Oh,
And when you do look back and reframe things of like, oh yeah, I'm not that person. Regardless of what happened to that version of me, I'm not that person. Like I'm this version of me, you know? Like I'm so much further along. And you know, one of the things too that people talk about like early childhood trauma. And that doesn't necessarily, you know, that varies in different degrees, but like we've all experienced the feeling of less than or of somebody not acknowledging us or somebody taking advantage of us or somebody just like talking smack of like your hair sucks, you know, and like we're like, oh my God, my hair sucks, you know, or you ugly, you know, it's like something wherever you got your feelings hurt. And it's like go into those moments and taking that younger version of yourself that did feel hurt or did feel isolated and then taking them on a tour of what you made your life since then of like, look, well, like, yeah, that was me then of like, but like, remember, you know, like, well, you know, I did this and then I did this and, you know, look, we did this and we met this person and now we're this. And it's like your younger self can look at it like, well, cool. Like, I'm glad it worked out for us, you know? And you can see those moments, like you said, as valuable now of like, yeah, it did serve a purpose. Like it put a drive in me or a desire in me for more. And, you know, sometimes it can be tricky to know exactly what is for you, right? Like what's my
yep.
purpose? What am I supposed to be doing here? But I think it's easier to start with what you don't want. Well, I don't want to be isolated. Like I don't want to have no friends. I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be unhappy. Okay, cool. I know what to avoid. You know, anything that makes me feel less than, okay, I'm not going to do that. Like, all right, so I feel scared. All right, well, I'm going to do brave things. You know, like when you know what you don't want, you know what to avoid. And then you can make decisions based on that of like, all right, well, I don't want to be broke. Okay, well, then you're going to have to get up early for that job.
Mhm.
You know, I don't want to feel this type of way. Okay, well, you're going to have to expand and actually talk to people. Okay. Like, you know, but like there's always like that trade. And my mentor told me the other day, God will give you anything if you're willing to trade. And oftentimes it's trading our lesser selves, our former selves, our fears, even for that life. I'm like, but you got to give up the fear, man. You got to give up the negative story. You got to give up the doubt. You got to get up the idea of why ain't these people supporting me? It's like maybe they're not supposed to. You know, like if God can use anything and do anything, well, He can also use that negativity and that hardship for your benefit if you keep going. And that's the thing of like, yeah, like when you look back, like if you go long enough, Steve Jobs used to say you connect the dots looking back, not looking forward.
Yes.
You like you don't know where it's gonna lead. But looking back, you're like, oh, that made sense. Oh yeah, like I did this and then I met that person because I did this. And then, you know, I even tell people that, you know, God's in the unlikely business. And the unlikeliness of me saying, Spanish sounds cool. I'll learn Spanish. When no one in my family spoke Spanish at all. And I didn't know at the time until we did like DNA records that my dad's bloodline started in Spain. That I'm like, oh, well, that's a cool little bit. Like I didn't know that. Okay, fine. But because I chose to learn Spanish, I have a wife. Because like I got asked to teach it Upward Bound, you know, late in the semester, they're like, you know, our professor backed out. We need somebody to come in. And I was like, okay, you know, I'll do you a favor. But because I did that favor, I met my wife, and then like now I have a whole family. But it's like if I never listened to my own good idea of like, hey, go towards Spanish. It sounds cool, do it, be good at it. Then I never would have. Where would I be? Like, would I still be single? Like, would I have married some other person? Like, my whole life would be different, you know. And it's like, yeah, you're worth listening to. Listen to your own good ideas. Like sometimes that's the jump off. You know, it doesn't have to be this grand thing at first. Just do the things that you believe matter long enough.
Oh yeah, and like you said, I love that quote by Steve Jobs where you connect the dots looking backwards, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so this it ties into what we were talking about, where you know some people say some things to you now, or something happens, and you just brush it off, like, ah, it's not that big of a deal, because we understand now, like, okay, so this all this stuff is leading somewhere. So there was no need for you to stress out back in the day, even when you broke your neck. Obviously, like I said, it was a terrible moment, but there was no need for you to stress out because look what you've created from it right now. So you can bring calm to your former self and say, you know what, it's gonna work out. You don't have to worry about it. You know, all you gotta do is just keep going, and I got it. You know, we're gonna figure this thing out. And so even things that happen now within our business life, like things that seem like it's high pressure or things go wrong, you just got to understand, like, it's another challenge. This is something that's going to bother me. It's going to disrupt me. These things happen all the time. All I have to do is put the work in. We're going to figure this thing out. And a year from now, I'm going to look back and say, you know what? That changed me for the better. I'm glad I went through that. I'm glad I kept going. Now look what I've created from it. That's the whole key. So anything that it pops up in my day, and I go through the same thing. I'm stressed and overwhelmed, and sometimes arguing with the wife, and the baby's waking up in the middle of the night. I can't get to work in the morning on time, and I'm interrupted and stuff like that. Those things frustrate me. I'm a human. I feel the same thing as everyone else. But once I work through that and I look back on my day, and it's like, okay, so even though that stuff happened, I still sat down. I still put in some work. This is the question I always ask people: what are you willing to cut out and sacrifice to make room for these new dreams that you're working on right now? Like,
Yeah.
are you willing? To me, like we said earlier, it's like the focus that you need to have, and the drive that you need to tap into is meaningful, and it's you have to channel something deep within you that maybe is not there right now, but what are you going to cut out to figure that out and try to find time for? Because you'll find time for what's important to you. So if creating a business and getting in shape and doing all these other, making your family unit stronger, like if that stuff is really important to you, you're going to make time for it. Are you going to stop watching sports? Are you going to stop playing video games as much? You're going to stop watching all these damn movies? Are you stop paying attention to the news all the time? Are you going to make the time for what's really, really important to you? And this is where I'm really passionate about, because I was distracted for like 35 years. I love video games. It's the best game. I was playing Super Smash Bros., League of Legends. I was all over Call of Duty Warzone, all that, Halo. Love those games. I was putting so much time into them until I realized that I wasn't going pro and I wasn't making any money off of it. And I was spending 4 hours a day playing video games. I was like, my priorities aren't correct. This is not helping me achieve what I really want to achieve in my life. I always felt like I wanted to make a lot of money. I always felt like I wanted to help people. I always felt like I wanted to travel the world. I was like, sitting here doing this isn't helping me do anything. Like it's making me feel like I'm a winner because I'm winning and I'm doing well in some of these games, but I wasn't really winning in real life. My team on TV, they're winning. They're making millions of dollars, $30,000 a game, while I'm sitting here broke, sitting on my couch watching all these people living out their dreams. Like, what am I doing? I was like, I don't want to do this. So I had to make some changes. I had to cut out these things from my life to make room for what I found important. And not a lot of people are willing to make that sacrifice. So it's like, you got to figure out what's the most important to you. Are you willing to sacrifice and put the work in to make this the dream happen?
Yeah, it's like it comes out to just that, right? Like, because it's like, oh, I don't have time to do this. Well, what are you doing with your time? Evaluate that. Like how, and I think it's worth it when you do, like, okay, say you want to make any change whatsoever in your life. You got to first look at, like, how am I even spending my time? What do I actually do with my time in my day? Because you're doing something. You're doing something. And I remember, like, Schwarzenegger said, people always asking, like, how are you doing this? He's like, well, I realize that, like, I'm going to be awake for about 19 hours a day. So for this many hours, like, I work out. For this many hours, I learn about, like, body movement. For this many hours, I go to class. For this many hours, I study acting. Like, he's like, I just mapped it out. I just made myself a schedule to do the things that mattered. I want to do these things. Okay, well, then I'm going to do these things so that I can do those things. And just figure it out. It's like, yeah, like, life is subjective, man. Like, you can just choose to do stuff. And like you said, like, you'll never get the other thing if you're not willing to cut out what you already have sometimes. It's like, oh yeah, like, well, you can just watch Netflix later. Like, like today your taxes are due. You should file your taxes. Like, you can press pause on that game, but like you'll never get back some of the other stuff. And sometimes later is too late. Like, oh yeah, I'll go talk to that girl, when I get up the courage. Somebody else might talk to her first. Like, oh, I'll apply to that job, later on. I'm like, well, Your bills are due today. Like, like sometimes later is too late. And it's like, yeah, those opportunities will go for somebody else. Like they're there, but God's not going to force you to win. He's just not, and one of the things that we have in my coaching is a creed statement. Like once you get into it, like we have this creed statement, we all read it. And the first thing is I'm willing to bring about my own greatness. It has to start with that. Because like when you don't feel like it, no one's going to make you do it. Like we're entrepreneurs, like no one's forcing us to do anything. No one's saying like, hey, Michael, did you wake up and send that email? Like, no. Like, hey, Michael, did you call that guy back? Like, hey, did you do this? Like, no one's going to force you to do it. Like it's that personal willingness. What's something that you let go of? Well, I guess you said it with the video games, but what's something that you gained because you let go of that?
More intentional time with my family, right? I feel like it almost feels like my 20s were a blur, right? Like, I don't know what I was doing. I was going out, I guess, playing video games, partying, playing beer pong, drinking, blah, blah, like I was doing all that stuff and watching movies. I could tell you everything about every Marvel movie and stuff like that. And I missed a lot of time with like even before my baby was here, with my parents and stuff. My dad, he has ataxia, so he got sick maybe like 18 or so years ago. And ataxia is a neurological disorder that affects balancing coordination. So he was a athletic person, went to the YMCA all the time to work out. He was into sports, and suddenly he couldn't drive anymore, and he couldn't go to work anymore. And then slowly, it's over the years compounded to where now he's bedridden. He can't get out of bed. And I feel like I missed a lot of that time where I just didn't understand. I was just lost in my own world. And life was just happening to me. And I think nowadays where, just like Arnold Schwarzenegger, where I looked at my time where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to miss time I'm not going to cut out time with my wife and not going to cut out time with my children. I've obviously got to work so I can bring in some money to take care of the house. I have to take care of the house, so I need to spend time on that stuff. There's all these things start adding up, and I'm like, okay, well, where's the video games? Where's this? Oh, it's lower on the total list because that's not really important to me. In 10 years, what I'm doing right now in my video games, it's not going to mean much, right? But all these other things that I'm spending time with, they can compound to something great. So more intentional time with my family, which is we're all working for more time with them in the first place, right? And so I'm like, okay, so let me use that extra time that I was wasting on other things, now focused on the things that I really need to focus on. And now I feel like, yeah, things have slowed down for me, and I feel like I'm actually seeing the people that I love the most in this life, and actually making time to call and talk to them, and understanding what these relationships mean to me, and being grateful for everything that they all do for me every single day. So it's I would say that's been the biggest benefit of dropping, watching sports all the time and movies and video games and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it sounds too like your gratitude level for what you have is exponential.
Oh yeah, skyrocketing.
We become so much more aware of the now of it all, that like, yeah, if I pause and just look around, like, oh, I like my bed. Oh, I love my wife's smile. Oh, my kid is weird and funny. It's like, these things that you actually just like stop and you're able to notice. And my dad retired like a year ago, and he's been working hard his whole life, military and multiple jobs, and then engineering, and then mechanical stuff, and even went back to college to get his bachelor degree in his 50s, and still progressing and doing things and accomplishing all this stuff. And then working third shift. So it's like, he's working 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. and then sleeping part of the day. And it's like, now that he's retired, he's like, I just wake up and sit on the back deck and be like, nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, look at this world I created, dude. Like, it was worth it. And like he's like, there's so much activity with like animals and deer in his yard. He's like, I never even noticed that. He's like, but like every day now, like he's so much more observant, and he's proud of the work he put in. That like, yeah, I was getting bits of this and bits of that and bits of that, but I'm glad I put in all that work, because like I can enjoy so much of it now. And like you said, we end up sacrificing time with family sometimes, of like, I got to get this done. Like, yeah, I would I'm doing it now so that I can spend more of my time with you for forever. You know, I'm willing to do these things. I'm willing to do these hard things. I'm willing to, you know, get leads and do all this stuff and do paperwork and like keep going so that like I can get more out of life. And so I can also I look at it as the get tos, right? Well, so that I get to spend more time with my family, so that I get to provide a better life, and so that we get to respect ourselves. Because even if you didn't go for like the things that you're going for now and helping all these people, you would still want to. You know, you would still want to. And I'm like, I don't want to deny myself in all this. Like, yeah, I enjoy playing video games, but like, I also want to do more. You know, like you said, when you start to look at it, like, how is this paying off? Like, I'm spending 1,240 hours a year doing this. For what now? What am I getting out of this? And I think, like, yeah, like when you look at what you're doing, like, you got to ask yourself that, like, what difference is this making? Like, what is this actually giving me? All these effort. If I'm going to put in all this effort, like, what am I going to get out of it? Like you said, like reaping, like sowing and reaping. Like, all right, I'm sowing all my time and effort and energy into this, but like, what am I reaping again? Just the temporary satisfaction that like my team won in this melee. Like, all right, what else though? And I think like when we do these types of things that actually mean so much more to us, like you said, you're investing in the people in your life. You're investing in your clients, you're investing in yourself to grow. Then you're like, yeah, now this is real substance that I can really feel achieved about, you know? Like, yeah, this stuff really does matter to me. And the birthday party that we went to in Nashville was for Tim Story. And he had this phrase where it's good ideas and God ideas. You know, a good idea might be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go for this job. But the God idea is like, yeah, the coworker that you don't know yet is going to be your first client, you know, for your dream, and they're going to support you. It's like, yeah, God ideas are built into good ideas, but if you never go for the good idea, you never get to experience the God idea. And it's like, well, dang, Tim, like that's a good way to look at it. You know, like you said, like all these worthwhile moments that never would have happened if you didn't do this. Like you got to start somewhere. And like, for me, like it's so amazing. And I love that I started before my family. So that like, as my kids grow, they're seeing that like, oh yeah, dad bet on himself. That's why we have this. Oh yeah, dad bet on himself. That's why he's like this. Oh yeah, dad bet on himself. That's why he knows all these answers. Like, oh yeah, dad. And I'm not ashamed to tell my kids too where I failed. And I think it's important to own your failures just like you own your successes. Of like, oh yeah, I failed and like, you know, got in a car accident. So you should definitely get your brakes fixed when you know this. like we're able to point out like where the potholes are, you know, in life and help other people win a lot faster. And I think that's fantastic. Like you and I, like we're helping our clients win faster because of what we went through, because of what we learned about ourselves. And like you said, hey, this is par for the course. Like, oh, you feel overwhelmed? I get it. It's like you're on day 45, but if you keep going, day 63 is going to be boss, you know? Day 63 are like when you get that client and that breakthrough or your client does something amazing, you're like, it was worth it. Or when you get that check, you're like, it was worth it.
Yeah. I want everybody to know that it's like these are the good old days, right? This is what's the grandpaps are looking back on and say, you know what? I want to go back to the time where I was putting in the work and I was hustling. It's not when they make it to the finish line. They look back at the journey, you know. So it's if you're not really enjoying yourself right now and like looking around and say, you know what, I'm on it. I'm making this happen. I'm putting in work. I feel so good. The direction that I'm going, you know, I could just look back a year and how much further I am from there. I'm much smarter, better place in my business. My family's doing well. You know, we moved into this place, yada, yada. It's like, if you don't look around and realize that you are winning, you're going to hate the journey and you're not really going to want to continue, right? But if you love the struggle and love the challenges that are thrown ahead of you and the ones that you keep conquering, like that's the recipe for success and understanding that you're going to look back on these times with such fondness that you kept going and you were able to come out on top. Like the people who climb mountains, when they're telling the story, they're not just telling you about the top and what it looked like to look around. No, they're saying, no, I did this and on the way, and it was a challenge. It was hard. We had to do this. We had to jump. Yeah, exactly. Like that's what you're telling me about. It's like I almost died. It's like they're telling you about the journey.
Yeah.
You're on the journey right now. This is it. There's no reason to be upset about it. Like, look around, like you're doing great things. If you ever, I would say to my clients, if you're ever doubting yourself or you're unhappy with your progress, like look back 3 months and say, what are 3 wins that I've had in this 3 months? Count them out. And now look back a month. What are 3 wins that I just had this past month? Count them out. No matter how big or small, it doesn't matter. What are 3 wins this week? What are 3 wins I had yesterday? What are 3 wins that I'm going to have tomorrow? And just track your wins. And once you see that you've been on a winning streak for a long time, especially if you're on this journey and you're putting in work and building a business, you're on a winning streak. I can tell you, you've been doing great things. You just haven't had the big payoff that you're kind of hoping for yet. But that's coming. If you keep winning and establishing that you're on a winning streak and you keep continuing to do that day after day after day after day, your big win's going to come. And when that comes, you're going to look back and say, man, I missed the journey. I missed it so much. It was so fun. I wish I could go back and do it all over again.
It was crazy. Look.
Exactly. So this is it. And that's why I keep telling people, like, there's no reason to be upset. Like, yes, we're all challenged. We're all overwhelmed. We're all stressing. We're all getting up early. We're sacrificing time for the family, all that stuff. It's going to pay off. It's going to pay off, baby. Just got to keep going and understand that you have great things around you. There's no reason not to understand that, things are going your way and you're happy that you're actually on the journey and making it.
Absolutely. And it's so important that we connect with people that can guide us from time to time. And I tell my clients, the reason that we're having this conversation, like our initial one, is I was like, because you asked for help. Like in the grand scheme of things, whether that's prayer or just internally, you're talking like, hey, like I wish this would happen. Like I just need some answers. And then you meet somebody like us and it's like, the reason that we're talking is because you wanted to bet on yourself. You want to get to the next level. And this is just a part of your story where you meet the person that gives you some answers that helps catapult you further. Like this is that part of the story, and like we all, I think the biggest thing that I'm glad I'm unafraid to do is ask for help. Like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Do you know how to do it? No, you don't. But like, somebody cool. Can you connect me with that person? Like you said, success is not new. People have been winning. Ask somebody that's doing something that you'd like to do, or you ask for help. Like, hey, I want to do this. Like, okay, find a coach in that area. Like connect with somebody that's going to give you some answers and help you along. Because like, once you do that, like it's amazing because we can't always see our own obstacles, we can't always see those micro decisions that are going to lead us to like a great path. But like, when you connect with a coach, then we're like, oh, by the way, did you think about this? And like, no, I didn't even know that. Like, what? I'm like, yeah, think about this and then do this. And then, we'll talk again. And they're like, man, that helps so much. Thank you. And for me, like my biggest concern after I broke my neck was like, how can I be valuable again? Like I was used to being valuable as a big athlete. I could run faster for my coach. I could hit harder for my coach. I could, do these things. And I think so often it's so much easier to get those physical growths. Like if you want a bigger chest, I got to do some push-ups. Fine. It's easy to figure out, but like, how do I become a better version of me? Sometimes we need some help, like somebody else to give us like that clarity. And it's like, I love now because like my value is not in what I do. It's who I am. It's me paying attention to what I've been through so that I can bridge gaps for other people. And it's like, yeah, now that value comes from like being and doing and putting in the reps. Like, oh, I did that 29,000 times. Here's what I learned. It is like now that's able to help other people win faster. And like for me, that's our greatest gift. Like of the perseverance, like my real get to from persevering is that I can help other people win faster. And, it all started because I was unafraid to ask for help. Like, yeah, like let's not make that a taboo. Like, no, you're a black man, so ask for help. Like it's not about not being tough or you're not strong enough to figure it out. Part of figuring it out, I think, is consulting with other people of saying like, hey, can you help me with this? And they're like, yes, I can. Now give me a boatload of money.
For sure.
I swear it's gonna be worth it though. It's gonna be worth it.
Sorry.
But I think even that of like, I think you end up building a better relationship with money because you realize like it's a tool. Sometimes like yeah, you got to bet big on that and get over that fear, and then like the value that you get from that financial investment, you're just like, oh man, I'm so glad I did this. Because you're taking skills and like an identity into the future, into every other endeavor after that.
Yeah. So I always say, you have to you become the person, right? You want to be, right? It's not about what you do. It's about becoming that person. So even with we're talking about financial investments and stuff. Like, think of the $1 million version. If you want to make $1 million, think about the $1 million version of yourself. You want to make $10 million, do the 10, 100, whatever. Think about that version of yourself who was already killing it, already willing. Are they thinking that $1,000 is a lot of money? Are they thinking that 10,000 is a lot of money? You got to get comfortable with these things and understand that the person you're becoming is bigger than all of that. You are very powerful just by going through the things that you have gone through and then being willing to share those things with other people. Every single person can teach another person something. The more you learn, you kind of realize that you don't know a damn thing, and that you can't do it all on yourself because you're like,
Yeah.
in the 20s, I'm like, man, I know, I don't have to listen to my mom.
I got this. I got this.
Yeah, exactly. Then you start learning where you're, I don't know a damn thing. There's so many things to learn. It's infinite. You can learn
Right.
an infinite amount of things in so much detail that you realize that, I need some help. Like, this is not gonna. You can either pay with time or you can pay with some money. Which one is more valuable to you? That's what I always say to people. At the beginning, it's hard because you don't really have that much money. So you have to put in the time, and you have to be ruthless with your time. Understand what you're putting your time into. Make sure that it's giving you a return on that time investment. So eventually you can start using money to throw around and pay for the help that you need, that you're going to need moving forward. Because yeah, I mean, you could do it all on your own, but it's a trial and error process. It's completely, you're going to go through, like Edison did, 10,000 iterations of one thing to try to figure out what works.
That didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you do that in public? Can you do that while while other people are watching you? Like, that's where the fear comes in, and understanding that, these things, that you have to face these things on your own most of the time. But having a mentor and a guide, and understanding, maybe someone can tell you about a book that they're reading, and maybe that's the exact thing that you need in your life. Like, some of those little nuggets, I think are the most important pieces. You have to learn to recognize the signs when they pop up in front of you, right? I was talking to a lady just the other day, just in the DMs. Like, she said something about her wanting to manifest money. I was like, well, maybe that's the reason we're having this conversation right now. I have helped clients do the exact same thing. They're struggling with their money and they didn't understand what they needed to do, help clear up their mindset and how they were undervaluing themselves. They started making different decisions from that. We're able to scale their money. So it's like understanding those little things that happen throughout your day as a sign, like, oh, okay. Like, you mentioned, just right now, I just had like a little omen. You mentioned fixing your brakes, to keep from getting into an accident. My mom's brakes aren't the best right now. So we've been talking about getting her either a new car or fix the brakes. And now I'm like, okay, we need to fix these ASAP, because your story tells me that, that's a very important thing, and we've been kind of putting it off. So that kind of hit me. As soon as you said it, that's the first thing my mind jumped to. And I recognize that as a sign that, okay, Michael, something's telling you right now, get that done before something happens.
Like, that thing you were thinking about, do it.
Do it.
Exactly. Right. And I think that's the value of having powerful conversations.
Yes.
Because you don't know what the nugget's going to be that gives you the confirmation of like, yeah, do the thing. And like, I love it when my clients say, it's funny that you say that. It's funny that you say that. I'm like, yeah, this is why we're doing these things, and like, I love that aspect of it. And like, for me too, it gives me more reason to keep growing. Like you said, you realize like, I need to learn more. Like, even me, after doing it all this time, I'm like, I'm still reading multiple books. I'm still reading some of the same books over again. Like I'm still growing and progressing and pushing myself, because stagnation is the only real enemy, right? It's like, you can never stay the same. Either you get better or you get worse. No one stays the same. Like, the version of you that, okay, these habits and these systems worked when you were 22. when you're 42, those habits and systems are not going to work. People are going to be like, dude, why are you still doing that? Like, oh, you still dress like that? You're still wearing FUBU? Like, what are you doing? Like, what's happening? Like, are you okay? And like, I want people to be like, wow, you've changed so much since high school, or you changed so much since I seen you last, or man, did I just see you on Apple TV? I'm like, yeah, you did. Like, you did. You did because like, not because like I'm just so great and special, but because I was betting on myself and putting in the work. I was building the relationships, I was building the foundation, I was building these things so that when the light does shine on it, it's like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff here. And it's like, yeah, we want the limelight and the glory, but it's like that comes when you build the systems in the dark. Like, you got to build all of it before Oprah comes calling. It's like, hey, I want you to be on my show. Well, you got to give her some stuff to look at. You got to build something for other people. And I remember when me and my wife got together, we were a couple of years in, and I said, thanks for believing in me. And she said, thanks for giving me something to believe in. And I'm like, there you go. Like, if I hadn't done anything, she would have nothing to believe in. And like, we wouldn't be having this conversation. All the meaning and the power just wouldn't be there. And it's things like that you're like, yeah, I'm glad I put in that work. I'm glad I bet on myself. I'm glad I didn't let the fear stop me, because like, if you let the fear stop you now, it'll always stop you. Then everything else will be even scarier. You're like, no, but like when you do the work, then the next hurdle doesn't seem so high. The next obstacle doesn't seem so big. The next financial commitment doesn't seem so daunting, because you're like, oh no, I know how this works. And it's like, yeah, dude, like, we're here to help you win faster. And it's like, it feels so much better when you do bet on yourself, like we have. And yeah, then your grandkids are just like, hey, how'd you do this? And like, man, when I was in my 20s, I was doing this and that. They're like, wow, And I think it normalizes greatness, because it normalizes the work. And you're like, yeah, the work is the precursor to greatness, Like, just like that paycheck, you won't get the paycheck unless you come to work. You won't get the girl unless you ask her out. You won't get a good dinner unless you learn how to cook. Like, it's sowing and reaping here. It's back to the basics and the capitalizing on them.
Yep. And like I said, everyone has a unique position in this world. Like, you've been through things that no one in history has ever gone through in the exact way that went through within your life. I've done the same thing. Like, I'm in a spot in my life where no one in history can tell my story how I can. Okay, so now how can you use that to help other people overcome the same things that you've been going through? And maybe you even feel that you conquered easily, Like, there's a lot of people who are struggling with everyday things that you may be thinking is a breeze for you to fix, or maybe you've been there, done that, overcame that. You can make a business out of that. You can help other people and change the world just by doing simple little things. Like, people are selling crazy things now. I mean, they're doing socks in a jar, like random things. They're selling. I don't know what people say. Like, they were picking up random things, and they're turning it into businesses nowadays. And so there's really no excuse for someone to, like you said, if you're stuck and not moving forward, you're just getting worse. It's either you're changing and getting better, or you're staying the same and getting worse. So goes back to what we were talking about, action. Okay, so what is the first step that you can take? Set a goal for yourself. You want to accomplish this. Let's say you wanted to start a business. What's the smallest step that you can take tomorrow or today to get you the ball rolling? Can you go online and look up an LLC, like how to do that? Okay, how to start a business? Like, I started my personal finance journey, like how to buy a house. That was my first Google search into my personal finance journey, where it took off. Like, my wife, this is what I keep talking about as well. You mentioned your wife and how you guys connected and where you would be if you'd have never met her or made some simple decision. Same thing with my wife. Like, would I be here had she not said, hey, I want to buy a house, figure it out? And I never Google searched how to buy a house. Like, if I never done that, I wouldn't be here. That's crazy to me. Like, would I have been captured and distracted and unsure of myself and lost and scared and all this other stuff if I didn't just do one Google search and led me down a rabbit hole where I just love what I started reading, and just kept going, and then realized, hey, I've got something of value here. Other people don't share this same value. They don't share the same knowledge. They don't understand these things that I'm talking about, and I love it. Let me see if I can turn this into helping other people with this topic, and then just being okay and not afraid to start, right? So I started my online profile anonymously. I was like, I'm not showing my face. That's too scary. I'm too chicken. Like, I'm not going to do this. So I made an anonymous account, didn't show my face, and then I started just writing, just start posting, whatever, just my thoughts, started getting a little bit of attention. I was like, you know what? I'm not really meeting people. I'm playing too safe. I need to put my face out there. And then it snowballed to the next thing. And then I started talking to people, and I got my clients. And then, it's a progression. So just understanding that you're going to be afraid at the beginning, but once you learn more about what that is, it's like they always say, it's a false evidence appearing real. It's like you're really afraid of what other people will think of you most of the time. Like if you're by yourself in a quiet room and you can fail over and over and over again and keep going, anybody could do that because, it's just whatever. But if you are failing and people are watching you, then you're like, oh, what are they thinking about me? Oh, this person, what are they going to say about me? I know they're talking about me behind my back. And
Right.
What about it?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Yeah. What is their opinion? Like, who cares? Just like we always say, everyone's got an opinion, right? What does that mean to you? Like, so understanding that the road you're on, you can do it. And people are going to talk. People are not going to believe in you. People, all that. But at the end of the day, why does that matter? What does that change? At the end of the day, like you said, we're all going to die at the end of the day anyway. And you're going to look back at your life and say, I let Sally in at my office, say her opinion, and then I didn't make a decision, and I didn't start my own business because she said it wasn't going to work.
Right.
At the end of your life,
see how ridiculous that sounds.
Exactly.
It's like that's my thing too. Of like, I tell my clients, if you can make something sound ridiculous, you can let it go. And like sometimes when you say things out loud, you're like, no, I'm not going to lose because of that. I'm not going to, not bet on myself because of this person that I don't even like. Yeah, and two, my mentor, he told me, he's like, people will root for you on your way up because they're like, wow, you're doing it, He's like, and then they will pray for your downfall once you get there because you'll remind them of what they gave up on.
Yes.
And they'd be like, oh, well, or who are you? Da-da-da, you think you're better than me? I'm like, you're mad at yourself. You're mad at yourself that you didn't bet on yourself and like you're not higher. Like that has nothing to do with me. And I realized that, as soon as I stopped making decisions based on other people's possible reaction, I was way happier and way more successful.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like I've heard a quote that said, if you want to be unhappy, ask 100 people what to do. Like, no, dude, stop asking everybody else's permission and what they think you should do and just do what you know to do. Do what you believe in. Do what you think sounds cool. Like, oh, that sounds cool. I'm going to go do that. And like, oh, how can I take what I think is cool and then add monetary value to it? And then, use it for my benefit. Because like you said, you can make a business just about out of anything. If you're willing to put in the work, if it means enough to you, if you're willing to create the space where you can win in that situation. And yeah, time, focus, energy, a couple good breaks, like that's all you need. You don't need 1 billion people to support you. You just need a few at first. Like, all right, now I'm making enough to pay my rent. Okay, cool. Like, now what can I do to make rent and buy food? Okay, cool. Okay, what can I do for this? Now what am I doing with the surplus? And I like that what you touched on too before we go is that sometimes you got to fast forward after. Okay, what if it does work? What does that do to your life? Like, like fast forward to the point where it's like, oh yeah, I did make that move. And like, okay, what does that mean for your life? What's the outcome that you're creating? And it's like, oh, well, that sounds exciting enough for me to put in the work now. The idea of winning sometimes and gives it that feeling of like, yeah, that would be awesome. Like, okay, let's backtrack a little bit. What needs to happen in order for that outcome to be there? And then it's like, oh, well, I guess I would just do this. I'm like, okay. And then who would you call? I'm like, oh, well, I would call this person. Okay. Turns out you have a plan now. Like,
There you go. What's stopping you?
Right. Now it seems so much more doable when you actually stop thinking about how it's not going to work and just think about, well, if it does work, that would be great. Okay, great. Now let's backtrack and figure this out. And you realize too that like so much is figure outable. Like, oh, turns out I can just do that. Like, yeah, you just can. Like you said, Google it. Start with a Google search, and like that could be the jump off to so much, you know. But it's like as soon as you bet on yourself a little bit, you get addicted to the process. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and then it becomes such a fun. Becomes fun building the empire, not just having the empire, you know. And the person I'm so much, I love the person that I am now. I don't think I loved the version of me that I was before all this.
No, not
I
at
was
all.
just kind of there. But like now, I'm like, yeah, I'm inspired by my own life. Good job, Milan. Like, great job. Like, it's fantastic. And it's like, yeah, it's so much more of a worthwhile life that way. When you find joy in what you're doing, you find joy in who you're becoming. You find joy in like, oof, thank God I'm not that person no more.
Mm.
You know, like, oof, thank God I did that. And it's like, yeah, like that's the worthwhileness of it is the becoming. Turns out is the best part.
Agreed. Yes, it's all about who you're becoming. And I thought it was very important what you're talking about, where, when you're starting to learn and become that person, a lot of the people around you aren't really going to understand. I would say they're afraid for themselves, and so they throw that fear onto you as well. And humans really have a crabs in a bucket mentality. As soon as one starts climbing out, then the others are grabbing and trying to pull you down. It's for safety. They don't want them to go off and get killed outside the bucket. So it's like, okay, let's pull them back down to safety. But understanding that that's like it holds people back. You really have to understand the people you are around when you start something like this aren't gonna understand what you're going to be going through, and they're going to throw their fears and doubts and worries on top of you. So just understanding that you need a group of people, like we're online meeting people, talking over the internet. You can do that. You could go to networking groups around your area, meet exciting new people who, when you do tell them your dream, they're not going to say, oh, that's not going to work. They're going to say, oh, that's cool. Tell me more about that. I'd love to hear some more.
Yeah.
It's just something, just simple support that says, hey, you can make it happen if you really believe in it. And so just tell me a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit more about that. Hey, let me see if I can add some value. I've been through this too as well. Why don't you try something like this? Why aren't you doing it this way? What's the mentality of doing it like this? It's like understanding that you have to be around people who know what you're going through and can support your dreams. Because yeah, I've been through the same thing where it's like I left every single one of my old friends behind because they just, my best friend, he laughed at me when I first told him about what I was doing, and the other people, they just kind of give silent nods, you just kind of disapproval, but they didn't want to say anything. And I struggled for a while to like find my people of, people who understood what I was going through and were striving for greatness as well. But then I just started going out and doing different things, playing volleyball and going to networking groups, and then started bumping into people just randomly. Like, oh, you got a business too? Why? Let's talk about it. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you trying to accomplish? Okay, you're going through this struggle. I went through the same thing. It's like it's a beautiful thing. It's really all about helping other people, right? Business is about solving problems for other people. So it's like find a problem that you can solve, make something around it that you enjoy, and then go out there and help as many people as you can. Humans, it feels like the whole point of being here is to help the next generation succeed. So look back, pull the person 2 steps behind you up, help them forward, and they can do the same thing. And it's just continuous line all the way down.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like, if we stopped and just thought about how many people helped us get to where we are now, we'd be writing all day long. Like, oh yeah, I saw this random YouTube video from a guy from like 300 years ago that like, oh yeah, that quote changed my life, and it's like, we're all benefiting from somebody else's insights already. So I think it's up to us to like absorb those insights, use them, and then provide our insights for whoever's looking at us, because like whether you want to or not, and you can either be an excuse on why life sucks and how hard it is and like how, I'm losing too, or you can be an example of how you can win, example of how life can be good, example of how you can capitalize on even the scariest, craziest situation. And it's like, yeah, you can either be an excuse or an example. And I'd rather be an example. There's people looking at me. I'm responsible for children. I'm responsible for my wife. I'm responsible to my family and the people I care about. And it's like, yeah, like I'm not doing this all alone. And like you said, like we're doing it to give value to ourselves and to give value to other people. And for me, like I think, I have this duty to God as well of like he's trusting me. He gave me life. He gave me all these good ideas for me to not do anything about them. Like I don't want to get to the end of my life and he's like, yeah, so I really wish you did that different. I'm like, my bad, Jesus. Like, she's like, yeah, I mean, it's too late now, but I mean, like for real, dude, like this could have been your life. And I remember Les Brown said, imagine like it's the last days of your life and all around your bed are the dreams that you were supposed to do. Like all the inventions and all the ideas and the relationships and the things that you were supposed to do. And now because you didn't, they're going to die with you. It's like, how many of those things would be in your room? And like, hopefully just one. Like, I think I didn't need that. Yeah, you got me on that one. But I did all the other ones though. I went for it. I went skydiving. I did the scary stuff. And it's like, yeah, like, you want it to be like, yeah, like, good job, man. Good job. You did it. And, the people that are around you that you're responsible for, they want you to be that great too. Like the real people, like we met via the power of the internet. But like, when I think about your success, I'm like, fuck, dude, I want Michael to win.
Facts.
I want him to win, and it's like, I realized too, when you're thinking that way and you've been betting on yourself, you can really desire other people to win because you're not thinking that they're taking something away from you. Like you winning does not mean that I can't win as much. I'm just like, no, look how much we all can win. Like, dude, there's so much abundance and so much money and so many opportunities in the world. Like it's not, there's no competition really.
No,
you're only in competition with you. Like so many people, like I was in a room full of like mostly life coaches in different fields. I coach here, I coach there, we do this. And there are some overlaps, but we're all serving different people. Mm-hmm. Like there's literally billions of people in the world. There's literally like thousands of clients that we can each have and serve and better because like we've all been impacted by countless people too. Like I don't need to know the people that wrote the books that inspired me. I don't, like I can get inspiration from like the movie Gladiator. I'm like, yeah, Maximus, like, yeah, like,
oh yeah,
with it. Like you gotta have people that are ready to fight with you. And like, you bet on yourself and you figure it out, you make it work. And like, that's the thing that makes the movie a great movie. Not that like, oh yeah, he figured out a problem and then he solved it the next day. No, it's because he was betrayed and like, he figured it out. And then like, he wanted to kill himself and life didn't matter. And then he met this person and then the inspiration came and then, this happened and that happened. Next thing you know, he's saving Rome. You're like, yeah, dude, like there's a domino effect. There's a compound effect to the choices that we make. And for me, like, I think realizing that today matters and treating it like it matters is the thing that made all of this worthwhile. You treat today like it matters over and over. Your whole life takes care of itself.
Well said, brother. Yeah, the last thing I'll say is, yeah, it's a successful life is nothing more than a few successful years put together. And a successful year is nothing more than a few successful months put together. Successful month, 4 successful weeks. Successful week, 7 successful days. Successful day is made up of all the different choices you make each hour, minute, and second. So if you just set a couple goals for the day, get those knocked off, successful day. Next day, keep doing the same thing. Eventually, if you just keep putting in the work and learning and growing and understanding the process, you're going to have setbacks sometimes. You're going to move forward. You're going to meet different people. They're going to give you different nuggets of advice. You're going to start reading books, just get 1% better every single day. And eventually, that successful life is going to be yours.
Absolutely. Well said. All right, brother. I appreciate your time. This was a good combo. I'm sure people are going to love it and everything. And it'll become the most popular episode on Spotify for
hey, that'd be awesome.
If you're gonna speak, you might as well speak greatness, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, man. I appreciate you, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Sounds good. Take it easy.
All right, peace.
Peace.